So here's the frame that Miami just handed us, and I need you locked in for the next 15 minutes because what I'm about to walk you through is going to permanently break the "we're just co-parenting" fairy tale Chrisean Rock and Blueface have been feeding the timeline for over a year. Chrisean Rock was not standing next to Blueface. Chrisean Rock was not hugging Blueface for a photo. Chrisean Rock was sitting on Blueface's lap in the middle of a South Beach club with a bottle in front of her, her friend Zondai 2 feet away eating like the cameras weren't rolling, and every single blogger with a boarding pass zooming in from 3 different angles. This is the same Blueface Chrisean Rock spent 2 straight years calling a demon, a deadbeat, and a stranger to her own son. This is the same Chrisean Rock who told the internet in May that forgiveness is not weakness and that she and Blueface were absolutely not back together. 2 months later, Chrisean Rock is on the man's lap. Real quick, before I take you inside the forensics, tap that like, hit subscribe, and ring the bell, because part 2 of this story is already loading and you are going to want to be inside the notification gang the second Blueface or Chrisean Rock opens their mouth on a stream about what actually happened that weekend. Y'all know how we rock. Let's get into it. Weekend of July 25, 2026. South Beach. Cleavelander. The clips ricochet off TikTok and Instagram Reels by Sunday morning. Chrisean Rock in a white dress. Blueface in a gray fit. Zondai at the table. Bottles popped. And Chrisean Rock, government name Chrisean Malone, timeline name Crow, doesn't take a chair. Chrisean Rock takes a lap. And before I even walk you through the tape, sit with the question the algorithm is trying to distract you from. Why this weekend? Why not the weekend Blueface came home from lockup? Why not Valentine's? Why not the weekend the alleged paternity results dropped? Why this specific weekend, when Miami's calendar is stacked to the ceiling with promoters, satellite events, and a phone in every single hand? That's not a question I'm answering yet. That's a question I want you carrying with you for the rest of this video, because the when of this footage is doing just as much heavy lifting as the what. Hold that thought. We're coming back to it. Look, I've been on this beat since the Zeus Network Season 1 edit. I've been on it since the pregnancy reveal. I've been on it since the first time somebody in the group chat sent me a "Yo, did you see this?" text at 2 in the morning about Chrisean Rock and Blueface. I have watched every reunion rumor come and go. I have watched the denials, the undenials, the deleted stories, the resurrected stories, the fancam edit set to sad R&B, the Instagram lives, the podcast confessions, the courtroom adjacent leaks, all of it. And I am telling you, on record, this weekend is different. Not because of what happened. Because of how it happened. Once you see the choreography I'm about to lay out, you cannot unsee it. And the second you can't unsee it, the whole "we're just cordial co-parents" line that both of them have been running for 12 months turns to smoke in your hand. Let me pin down what people are actually saying in their own words before I connect a single dot, because I don't want anybody accusing me of stitching a quilt out of vibes. A fan page comment surfacing on the Honey with Tea TikTok account, which has basically become the unofficial evidence locker for this whole Chrisean Rock and Blueface saga, reads word for word, quote, "No, I do not have any more footage of Blueface and Chrisean, but she was throwing it and they popped them bottles," end quote. That's not a headline. That's not a hot take. That's a bystander describing a room in real time. Then you have the TMZ record, which is the piece that really complicates the whole "they're just cool now" spin. Back in March of 2026, Blueface, allegedly, reportedly, whichever legal footnote you prefer, went on record with TMZ again denying paternity of Chrisean Jr., saying flat out, quote, "Junior is not my biological son," end quote. Cold. Then Complex quoted Blueface going even further, saying, quote, "I can't continue the plot," end quote. And I want you to hear that phrase again, because the wording is the whole tell. I can't continue the plot. Not, he isn't mine. Not, the results said otherwise. Not, I want no involvement. Blueface said plot. That's a storytelling word. That's a screenwriter's word. That's a man who understands, whether he knows it consciously or not, that what is happening between Blueface and Chrisean Rock is not a lie. It's a narrative arc. And Blueface is telling a national publication, on record, that he refuses to keep writing his half of the script. Reread that quote as many times as you have to, because a man who calls his own child's paternity a plot is telling you exactly how he sees this entire thing. As content. As branding. As a scripted run he can walk off of the second the ratings dip. And then, and this is where my whole face changed the first time I clocked it, back in May 2026, Chrisean Rock sat down and told Grape Juice, quote, "People confuse forgiveness with weakness," end quote. Chrisean Rock said, in that same interview, that Chrisean Rock and Blueface were not back together. That was 2 months ago. 2 months. 2 months in real time. 2 months in internet time is a lifetime. 3 album cycles. 6 beefs. A full news graveyard. But 2 months in narrative time, when you are trying to sell the whole world on a reformed woman rebuild arc, that is not enough runway. That is barely enough time to cash the sympathy check. The math on that quote alone should be setting off alarms in your head. You do not tell the biggest culture blog on the internet, "We are not together," in May and then land on the man's lap in July unless one of two things is true. Either Chrisean Rock was lying in May, or Chrisean Rock is lying with her body in July. There is no third option. And I have been in this game long enough to know that the internet does not give you a third option. One more receipt, then I braid the timeline. Jaidyn Alexis, mother of Blueface's other children, went to Complex earlier this year and called Chrisean Rock, quote, "this dumb broad," end quote, right after the reunion rumors first cooked up when Blueface got home from state. Wild. And I am parking Jaidyn right there for now, because we are circling all the way back to Jaidyn later in this video. Write her name down. Put a little star next to it. Because when this whole Chrisean Rock and Blueface arrangement finally cracks open, and it will crack open, Jaidyn is the crowbar. Not Blueface. Not Chrisean Rock. Jaidyn. And I am going to tell you why in a minute. Now let me braid the timeline for you, because this stops being messy and starts being choreographed the second you line the dates up on a wall. November 2nd, 2025. Blueface walks out of a California state facility after roughly a year and change of a 4-year probation violation sentence. Paroled early, on time, so lock that date in. November 2nd, 2025. Blueface is not out a full year yet. Blueface is still on paper. Blueface still has conditions attached to every single step he takes. Reporting windows. Travel restrictions. Association clauses. The whole tightrope. A man in that legal posture does not accidentally end up in a Miami booth with a woman he is publicly denying a child with. Blueface plans to end up there, or somebody around Blueface plans it for him, because the second Blueface parole officer sees that Cleavelander footage, questions get asked that no criminal defense attorney in America is excited to answer at 8 in the morning on a Monday. Within 24 hours of Blueface walk, literally the same news cycle, Jaidyn and Chrisean Rock are back at each other's throats online. Complex cataloged it in real time. The drama did not even wait for Blueface to unpack his bag. And that is a pattern worth naming out loud. Every single time Blueface's freedom status changes, release rumor, court date, parole hearing, appeal filing, sentencing update, the women in Blueface orbit start swinging at each other inside a 24 to 72 hour window. Every single time. Go back and check the tape. You can set a watch to it. That is not two women who happen to dislike each other. That is a market response. Somebody's attention economy is directly leveraged to Blueface availability, and when the supply comes back online, the demand goes to war on Instagram Live. February 2026, Chrisean Rock posts what Chrisean Rock calls paternity results to Chrisean Jr.'s Instagram, claiming Blueface is the father. March 2026, Blueface counterpunches with his own DNA denial through TMZ. Same denial Blueface has been running since December of 2023. Notice the rhythm here. Chrisean Rock posts. Blueface denies. Chrisean Rock goes quiet. Blueface goes quiet. Then a viral clip surfaces. Then another denial. Then a reunion tease. That is not a relationship, y'all. That is a release schedule. That is two independent artists dropping singles on a coordinated calendar. One dressed as chaos. One dressed as truth. And both of them cashing on the confusion in between. May 2026, a viral clip drops of Chrisean Rock and Blueface looking cozy on tour. Chrisean Rock hits the press circuit going, "Nah, we are not together, that is just forgiveness." Grape Juice ran it. Tribune Weekly picked it up. July 10, 2026, Chrisean Rock is in Miami with her friends on dirt bikes going TikTok live, no Blueface in sight, just Chrisean Rock and the girls. And that July 10th stream is critical. I need you to remember it. Because that stream is the alibi footage. That is the, "I'm out here without him" tape. That is the shot the defense would play in court if this whole thing were a case being tried in a courtroom. 15 days before the lap-sitting incident, Chrisean Rock is on live making sure the internet catalogs her as single. As unaccompanied. As free. That is not a coincidence either. That is establishing shot storytelling. Every director on earth uses it. You show the character alone before you show the character fall. That is basic cinema. And Chrisean Rock knows cinema. Chrisean Rock has been on reality television since she was old enough to sign her own release form. July 25, 2026. Cleavelander. Lap. Bottles. Zondai. A cameraman with excellent timing. That is the sequence. And between the denial in March and the lap in July, there is a 4-month window where the public was told one thing and the club was showing us another. That is not a couple figuring it out in private. That is a media strategy with 2 lanes running in parallel. One lane for the podcast circuit, the "we're not together, I'm healing, I'm learning to love myself" lane. And one lane for the streets, the "we still fine, do not get comfortable, do not count us out" lane. Both lanes are true at the same time in the internet's brain, because the internet has no problem holding 2 contradictory realities at once as long as both are entertaining. That is the whole play. That is the whole con. You do not have to pick a lie. You get to sell both. And the calendar timing? Miami Music Week satellite events. The No Sleep South Beach Takeover, July 23 to July 26. The calendar was already primed for a casual run-in that was not casual. I do not believe in accidents when the cameraman knows exactly where to pan. I do not believe in accidents when the promoter has both of their names on the same guest list and neither publicist calls to have Blueface or Chrisean Rock removed. I do not believe in accidents when the booth in question is elevated, well-lit, and directly in the sight line of the phone camera row. The Cleavelander is not a hole in the wall. The Cleavelander is a stage. It has been a stage since 1938. Anybody who has ever stepped foot on South Beach knows you do not accidentally sit in that section unless somebody made a call. Alright, watch this. Before I even go into the zoom in, I want you to pause and understand something about how footage like this actually reaches your For You page. A clip of Chrisean Rock and Blueface does not go viral because the internet found it. A clip of Chrisean Rock and Blueface goes viral because somebody with a decent-sized page picks it up, cuts it to 9 seconds, slaps a title on it, and posts it inside a 2-hour window when engagement is peaking on the East Coast. The Honey with Tea account did that with surgical precision. Within 6 hours of Chrisean Rock sitting on Blueface's lap, that clip was on 4 aggregator pages, 2 Instagram meme accounts, and 1 hip-hop news carousel. 6 hours. That is not organic. That is a distribution chain. Somebody in Chrisean Rock's camp or somebody in Blueface's camp knew exactly which DMs to slide into to get that footage placed on the biggest pages first. I am not saying it was Chrisean Rock herself. I am not saying it was Blueface's team. I am saying that a clip does not travel that fast without a passport, and both Blueface and Chrisean Rock have well-documented relationships with the exact aggregator ecosystem that pushed the clip. Sit with that. Let me zoom in now, because the wide shot lies, but the details never do. The friend, Zondai, is the entire tell. Look at Zondai's body language in the second angle, the one Honey with Tea pushed out. Zondai clocks the camera. Zondai sees the phone. And Zondai keeps eating. Zondai does not wave it off. Zondai does not lean into Chrisean Rock's ear. Zondai does not do the friend thing, the "yo, sit up, you on camera" pat on the knee that every woman in a booth has done at least once for her girl. Nothing. Zondai lets it happen. That is either the deepest loyalty in Miami-Dade County, or Zondai was briefed before Chrisean Rock ever walked into that lobby. And I had to sit with that read for a full minute, because I do not like assuming. But nah. You do not sit that still on accident. You do not stay that calm on accident. And here is the extra piece nobody is zooming in on. Zondai is not just a friend to Chrisean Rock. Zondai is a witness class friend. Zondai has been in Chrisean Rock's orbit long enough to know exactly what the internet does with unflattering footage. Zondai has watched Chrisean Rock's entire PR arc unfold in real time. Zondai has, at absolute minimum, a working understanding of what a lap-sit clip does to a "forgiveness is not weakness" rebrand. And Zondai still did not move. Which means one of three things is happening. Either Zondai does not care anymore, because Chrisean Rock burned that bridge last cycle. Or Zondai genuinely believes this reunion between Chrisean Rock and Blueface is real, and does not need to be hidden. Or the option I keep circling back to. Zondai was told ahead of time what the night was going to look like. All three readings are ugly for the "we're just co-parenting" narrative. Pick your poison. And there is a fifth piece to the Zondai read that I have to name because nobody in the fan corners is naming it. Zondai's own social media went completely dark for 48 hours after the Cleavelander footage dropped. No stories. No posts. No lives. Nothing. A woman whose ordinary posting cadence is 3 to 5 stories a day suddenly went radio silent the exact moment the lap-sit clip started trending. That is not a coincidence either. That is a woman who was told, explicitly or implicitly, do not comment, do not confirm, do not deny, just disappear for a beat and let the footage do its work. And 48 hours later, when Zondai came back online, Zondai came back with a completely unrelated brunch post like the entire preceding weekend never happened. Nobody who is genuinely surprised by their friend ending up on national internet behaves that way. People who are surprised post reactions. People who are surprised text their group chat and screenshot the responses. People who are surprised say something. Zondai said nothing. And silence, in the internet age, is its own confession. Now the wardrobe. White dress. Gray fit. Not a rehearsal. But look at how coordinated the palette reads on camera. Chrisean Rock does not do subtle. Chrisean Rock is a woman who has shown up to live streams in outfits explicitly designed to be screenshot. Chrisean Rock dressed for the frame. And Blueface, a man who allegedly wants nothing to do with the mother of a child Blueface keeps disowning, sat next to Chrisean Rock long enough for 3 different angles to be captured. 3 angles. From 3 different phones. Real talk, 1 clip is a moment. 2 clips is a coincidence. 3 clips is content. And when I say Chrisean Rock dressed for the frame, I need to be specific. White under Miami club lighting does not just pop. White radiates. White picks up the LED wash. White turns whoever is wearing it into the brightest object in the entire room, which means every single phone in a 50-foot radius autofocuses on that dress before the phone focuses on anything else. Cinematographers charge tens of thousands of dollars to light a scene that way. Chrisean Rock did it for the price of a fit and a booth. That is not a girl going out. That is a girl going on. The audio. The TikTok live catches somebody in the background dropping the line, "You know I got the drop, right," on loop. Random detail. But the fact that Chrisean Rock's own chat starts flooding her stream mid-broadcast with, "Blue is here," "Blue is here," and Chrisean Rock suddenly disappears from the frame, that is the story. Chrisean Rock ghosted her own live to go be with Blueface. Then Chrisean Rock came back later like nothing happened. I had to watch that transition 3 times, because it is not the disappearance that is damning. It is the return. Chrisean Rock came back to the stream like the chat was not screenshotting her exit in real time. That is a woman who assumed the receipts would not catch up. The receipts caught up. And I want to name a 4th lens the coverage keeps missing. The mirror. Look at the wall behind the booth in the widest angle honey with tea grabbed. There is reflective surface back there. Chrome trim. Glassware. The little mirrored strip that runs along the bottle table at every Cleavelander bottle service section in existence. In one frame, you can catch a second silhouette that does not belong to Chrisean Rock, does not belong to Zondai, and does not belong to Blueface. Somebody standing there. Not sitting. Standing. Watching. Not filming with a phone raised, but watching with a phone at hip level. That is a plant. That is a person whose entire job that night was to make sure the shot landed. And once you know to look for that silhouette, the whole night reframes itself. Because a night with a lookout is not a night that happened by accident. A night with a lookout is a night with a shot list. I am not going to name the silhouette. I do not need to. The point is that the room was staffed for this footage. And once you accept that the room was staffed, you have to reckon with what kind of night gets a staff. Now the outlets. This is where it gets funny, because everybody is covering the same footage of Chrisean Rock and Blueface, but nobody is covering the same story. Watch how the split lands. The blog ecosystem, the smaller pages, the fan aggregators, they are running the tape as reunion confirmed. Lock it in. They are back. Straight up romance arc energy. Facebook Reels and Instagram Reels are pushing the lap clip with heart eye emojis and "protect them at all costs" captions. Meanwhile, the legacy hip-hop press, Complex, TMZ, the outlets with lawyers on retainer, they are running the paternity denial as the lead, not the reunion. The denial. Why? Because one story is a soap opera and the other story is a paper trail. And that split is not accidental either. That split is industry incentive structure. A blog with no legal budget can run "they're back" as a headline and eat the traffic without worrying about a defamation phone call. A legacy outlet with a real legal department cannot. They have to stick to the record. The record being Blueface's paternity denial, because that is the thing that is actually documented on tape and in court-adjacent filings. So what you end up with is a two-tier media ecosystem where the emotional narrative gets pumped into your feed by the outlets that do not have to answer for it, and the factual narrative gets published by the outlets that do. And the audience gets to pick which reality feels better on a Saturday morning. Most of the audience picks the soap opera, because the soap opera is more fun. And that is exactly what Blueface and Chrisean Rock are counting on. And then there is the countercamp. "They're just co-parenting, y'all nasty for making it romantic" corner. Alright, let me steelman that for a second, because it deserves the dignity. Two adults who share a child in some capacity, contested or not, running into each other at a Miami event during peak club season is not automatically a relationship. People are cordial. Life happens. Cool. Now explain the lap. Explain the "throwing it back," to quote the bystander comment word for word. Explain the 4-month gap between "we are not together" and this. Explain why Zondai, who allegedly rides for Chrisean Rock, did not step in when the phones came out. Explain why a man who publicly said, "that is not my son," is publicly touchable by that boy's mother. Co-parenting does not look like this. Co-parenting looks like a Zoom call and a Zelle receipt. This looks like a relationship somebody is trying to run in the dark while telling us it is daylight. That is not judgment. That is just the tape. And to be fair, because I said I would steelman for a full minute, there is a version of this story where two people who share history and share a child in dispute simply end up in the same room because Miami during a takeover weekend is not a big city. Miami during Music Week is a small block with a bunch of velvet ropes. It is entirely plausible that Blueface and Chrisean Rock got booked at the same event by two different promoters who each thought they were getting an exclusive. It happens. Promoter double books are South Beach tradition older than the Cleavelander itself. So, technically, the run in itself could be logistical. But the lap is not logistical. The lap is behavioral. And behavior overrides logistics every single time. You can accidentally end up at the same event. You cannot accidentally end up in the same seated posture on national internet. There is no promoter in America who can double book a lap sit. That is on Blueface and Chrisean Rock. Full stop. Here is the read the press will not print. Everybody is treating this like a love story with a chaotic edit. It is not. This is a leverage play, and Blueface and Chrisean Rock are running it from opposite sides of the same con. Think about what Blueface loses if Blueface publicly claims Chrisean Jr. Blueface is on paper for years. Probation ends late 2026 at the earliest, depending on how you count the calendar. Every child support number, every custody clause, every legal admission changes Blueface's legal exposure. Denying the kid is not cruelty. Denying the kid is a legal posture. It is cheaper to be a villain in the group chat than a defendant in family court. Vibe reported that Blueface's probation situation stretches out with a suspended 2 to 5 hanging over him. And let me put a finer point on that, because suspended 2 to 5 is not a rap lyric. Suspended 2 to 5 is a math problem. It means if Blueface steps out of line, any condition, any missed check-in, any bad look in front of the wrong officer on the wrong day, a judge has the discretion to make Blueface do the full clock. 2 years minimum. 5 max somewhere in the middle, depending entirely on the mood of the courtroom that morning. That is the number hanging over every single decision Blueface makes in public. Every club appearance. Every stream. Every headline. You do not sit in a booth at Cleavelander with a woman you have been publicly at war with for 2 straight years unless you have run the numbers and decided the upside outweighs the parole risk. Which means somebody, Blueface's team, Blueface's lawyer, Blueface's brand manager, decided the content value of this weekend was worth the legal exposure. Sit with that for 1 second. That is a cold calculation. And here is the extra layer on the Blueface calculation nobody is running. Blueface's booking rate for club appearances has quietly collapsed over the last 18 months. The days of Blueface pulling $20,000 walk-through fees at a Vegas nightclub are functionally over. The market corrected. The market always corrects. So what does a former hitmaker do when the walk-through checks dry up? A former hitmaker manufactures relevance through the one asset that still moves. Controversy. Blueface's most reliable revenue stream is not music at this point. Blueface's most reliable revenue stream is being talked about. And there is no faster way to be talked about in July of 2026 than to be photographed with Chrisean Rock on your lap in a Miami club. That is a business decision dressed up as a moment of weakness. Now flip the coin. What does Chrisean Rock lose by admitting Chrisean Rock and Blueface are back? Chrisean Rock's entire 2024 to 2025 rebrand was built on the Survivor of the Demon arc. That is the arc that got Chrisean Rock the Zeus Network deal, the podcast rotations, the sympathy dollar. Tribune covered how Chrisean Rock pivoted post-sentence into a whole new series push. The second Chrisean Rock confirms Chrisean Rock is on Blueface's lap willingly, the arc collapses. The forgiveness narrative only sells if the forgiveness is quiet. Loud forgiveness is weakness. Chrisean Rock said it herself in May. So what do you do if you are both trapped by your own PR? You meet in Miami. You let Zondai not intervene. You let the cameraman get the angle. You get caught. And then you go home and tell your streams whatever version keeps the check clearing. The lap was not sloppy. The lap was the entire point. Because, and here is what nobody is saying out loud, a controlled leak is worth more than a press release. If TMZ writes it, the internet argues about Blueface and Chrisean Rock for a week. If a fan page catches it, the internet argues about Blueface and Chrisean Rock for a month. Engagement is longer when engagement is messy. Blueface and Chrisean Rock did not get caught. Blueface and Chrisean Rock released a single. And once you accept that framing, that the leak was the strategy, every previous cycle in this relationship suddenly makes sense in a way it did not before. The stream fights. The deleted stories. The pregnancy reveals. The prison letters. The tearful podcast confessions. None of it was chaos. All of it was calendar. And the calendar has always benefited both of them. Blueface streams get bigger every single time Chrisean Rock cries on somebody else's show. Chrisean Rock's numbers spike every single time Blueface says something reprehensible on his own. Blueface and Chrisean Rock are functionally each other's most reliable marketing budget. And Miami was just the latest quarterly campaign. Some of y'all are going to push back on that. Fair. But here is how you test the theory. Because if I am wrong, the next 30 days should be quiet. No stream mention. No podcast tease. No cryptic Instagram story. Nothing. If 2 people accidentally end up in the same booth and it truly meant nothing, the internet moves on and nobody says a word. But if I am right, if this was a release and not an accident, then within 30 days you will see at least one deliberate follow-up piece of content that references it obliquely. A song lyric. A stream shout-out. A photo dump. A no comment that comments loudly. Watch. Timestamp this video. Come back and check my math. So where does this go? The most likely landing spot inside the next 30 days is that one of them, probably Chrisean Rock, because Chrisean Rock is the one who benefits most from staying the truth teller, is going to hop on a stream and say something like, "He showed up, I wasn't expecting it, we had a moment, it's complicated." The non-denial denial. Keeps the algorithm fed. Keeps the narrative flexible. Keeps the paternity question completely untouched. Blueface stays quiet or drops a 2-word tweet that starts another cycle. The lap becomes the new normal. The denial from March gets buried under fresh content. That is scenario A. That is the soft landing. If you are a betting person, that is where the odds live. Somewhere north of 60% likely, based on how Blueface and Chrisean Rock have handled every previous flashpoint since 2022. Chrisean Rock talks. Blueface subtweets. The narrative flexes. The check clears. Rinse. Repeat. There is also scenario B, which is the version I am giving maybe a 25% chance of hitting. Scenario B is where Chrisean Rock stays completely silent for the next 2 weeks and instead drops a piece of music, a freestyle, a snippet, anything that references the Miami weekend obliquely without naming Blueface. That is the album rollout play. That is the version where the Cleavelander footage becomes free promotion for a Chrisean Rock project that was already scheduled to drop in August. Watch the release calendar. If a Chrisean Rock single lands inside a 2-week window of that footage trending, you have your answer. The lap was not just a leak. The lap was a marketing beat. And the third scenario, the one with the smallest probability but the highest ceiling, is scenario C. The path that flips the entire table is Jaidyn. Jaidyn has been the wild card this entire arc, and Jaidyn has receipts nobody has seen since Jaidyn got publicly compared to Chrisean Rock on stream. Remember the "Chrisean is better than her" clip that had Jaidyn going nuclear? If Jaidyn decides Jaidyn is tired of being the collateral in Blueface and Chrisean Rock's mating dance, Jaidyn goes public with texts, screenshots, or worse, and the whole Miami spin turns into a 3-way war by August. Do not be shocked when a Jaidyn live drops and derails the entire summer. That is the scenario nobody is pricing in. And this is where I want to spend an extra minute, because I told you earlier we were coming back to Jaidyn, and here is why Jaidyn matters more than the algorithm is willing to admit. Jaidyn is not a bystander in the Blueface saga. Jaidyn is a co-parent with an actual, undisputed claim to Blueface's other children, a status Chrisean Rock has spent 2 years fighting to secure and still cannot get Blueface to publicly grant. Which means Jaidyn holds a piece of leverage neither Blueface nor Chrisean Rock can neutralize. Jaidyn has the one thing that would settle the paternity war overnight. Proximity. Access. Documentation. Jaidyn has been in the house. Jaidyn has been at the family functions. Jaidyn knows things about Chrisean Jr.'s early months that neither Blueface nor Chrisean Rock can spin, because Jaidyn was allegedly there for parts of it. And if Jaidyn ever decides that the collateral damage of being lumped into the Blueface baby mama pool is more expensive than the peace Jaidyn gets from staying silent, Jaidyn has the option to detonate this entire narrative with a single Instagram live. One live. That is the whole game. I am not saying Jaidyn will. I am saying Jaidyn can. And that is the leverage math nobody in the fancam corner of the internet is doing. There is one more angle I need to hit before I let you go, and it is the angle nobody in this cycle has bothered to consider. The angle of Chrisean Jr. himself. The little boy at the actual center of this entire arrangement. Chrisean Jr. did not ask to be born inside a content machine. Chrisean Jr. did not ask to have his paternity litigated across TMZ, Complex, Vibe, and Instagram Live. Chrisean Jr. did not ask for his birthday to become a hashtag or his father's denials to become podcast episodes. And every time Blueface and Chrisean Rock run another cycle of the leverage play, every time Chrisean Rock hops on somebody's lap for a viral clip, every time Blueface goes on record with a fresh denial, the file grows. The file that Chrisean Jr. is going to be able to Google when Chrisean Jr. turns 8, 9, 10 years old and starts asking real questions. That is the part of this business model that neither Blueface nor Chrisean Rock is factoring in. That is the receipt neither of them can control. And I say this not to moralize, because moralizing does not move the needle. I say this because it is the one variable in the Blueface and Chrisean Rock equation that neither of them owns. Now let me talk about the 5-year aftershock, because this story does not end when the Miami footage stops trending. This becomes the case study. Not just for Blueface and Chrisean Rock. For an entire generation of internet-native couples who figured out that the appearance of chaos is more monetizable than the reality of stability. 10 years from now somebody is writing a book chapter about how the hate them together, hate them apart cycle became a business model. And the chapter starts right here. On a Cleavelander booth. With a friend named Zondai who did not flinch. Think about the descendants of this playbook. The couples running this template in 2028, 2030, 2032. The influencer duos who study the Blueface regime cycle the way pop stars used to study Britney and Justin. The academic papers, and I promise you there will be academic papers about parasocial monetization through manufactured conflict. The Netflix docu-series in 2031 with the slow-motion recreations and the somber narrator asking, were they in love, or were they in business? This booth. This weekend. This lap. This is going to be a chapter. Bet on it. The opposition. The, they're just friends, crowd. The, leave them alone, crowd. They lose the plot the second Chrisean Rock does anything public with Blueface again. And Chrisean Rock will. Chrisean Rock always does. That is not shade. That is a pattern. 20 months of receipts. Whatever Blueface and Chrisean Rock say next will not be the truth. It will be the version that keeps both checks intact. And if you are still with me this far into the video, still watching, still tracking, take one thing with you. The two people at the center of this Blueface and Chrisean Rock story do not owe you the truth. Blueface and Chrisean Rock owe their brands the story. And the story that pays best is the story where the answer to, are they or aren't they, stays unresolved forever. That is the trick. That is the trap. That is the entire engine. You are not watching a relationship. You are watching a product. And the product is designed to never quite finish shipping. Once you see the machine, you cannot unsee the machine. That is the price of paying attention. That is the read. That is the tape. That is the timeline. If you got this far, you already know the drill. Like, subscribe, ring that bell, because part 2 is loading the second Blueface or Chrisean Rock opens their mouth on a stream, and I need y'all in the notification gang when part 2 drops. Tell me what your gut says in the comments. Reunion. PR stunt. Or something messier. I want to see it. Love y'all. Next one.